Hold up, I am on my way, I'm in motion.
Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. Go get yourself something to eat or drink for today's video because we are going to talk about something that is so important. With the holidays coming up, I know a lot of us feel a lot of anxiety about the potential of running into family or friends that may have body shamed us or made us feel less than in the past. And so today's video is going to be how to combat the body shamers that we encounter every single day. Before we jump in, I want to introduce myself. My name is Shaylee, and I am so glad that you are here today. If you're new here, leave a comment down below and introduce yourself. And if you enjoy this video that you're about to watch, be sure to subscribe on your way out. All right, so I'm gonna make a disclaimer. I am not a psychologist or mental health professional. I am somebody who's immersed in the mental health world and the psychology world because it's something that I am very passionate about. It's something I enjoy, and I'm in counseling 2 times a week, and it's just my jam, if you will. So I always love when you guys send me messages asking me to cover topics such as this one today, because I'm extremely passionate about this. I want you to be able to live a life free of shame and of guilt and the weight that we carry for our bodies and the way we look is so tremendous. And I don't think we realize the effects it has on us emotionally, physically, mentally. So I want this conversation to feel like you and I are just sitting down for coffee and we're having a conversation, girlfriend to girlfriend or girl to guy, and we can just talk through these things and work through some of these things, because I know you may have clicked on this video and thought to yourself, I don't really know if I know of any body shamers necessarily in my life. But the reality is we get so accustomed to being body shamed, especially if you exist in a larger body like myself, that we don't even realize that it's happening often until we look back later and we're out of that relationship, or we go through something like therapy that teaches us that we need to lay boundaries. Things like that make us more aware of some of these relationships that we have in our lives. But if it's something that you've never confronted before and something that you've never really dealt with head on before, this video might be a little bit of a challenge for you. And I just encourage you to dig in with this. If you hear things that make you feel a certain way, your feelings are there for a reason. Our feelings are information, so they're trying to tell us something. So since I am not a psychologist and I'm not just going to talk out of my behind like I know everything, I'm actually going to be looking up some different resources as I talk to you guys today. I will be sure to credit all of those resources in the description box below. There's a great article that I found on Psychology Today, and it's called 7 Strategies to Shut Down Body Shaming from Family Members. And I thought we could start there. The feeling of shame in itself causes anxiety and depression. Oftentimes we're carrying something that we're ashamed of or that we've been shamed for, and we don't realize why we feel anxious or depressed or sad. And oftentimes it's there. It's in those comments or it's in those assumptions that we have. In the last few years of going to therapy, I have realized that the term shame on you brings so much psychological damage to others. And so I try to avoid saying shame on you or you should be ashamed of yourself or anything like that, because those comments are so final and it's not allowing others to grow from their mistakes, because we all make mistakes. And if we can think back to one time in our life when we've royally screwed up, because we've all had those moments, if we were met by people saying shame on you, shame on you, shame on you, well, guess what? We're going to harbor this shame, which is going to turn into other things like anger, bitterness, resentment, sadness, depression. And then what pours out of us? All of that crap. All of that crap that we buried inside is now going to come pouring out to everybody else. So let's first start this video by saying there's so much power to the words that we say. So when somebody comes up to you and they shame you for something, don't shame them back. That's actually not going to solve anything or cause any real healing to happen. It's just going to be this circle of shame that we're just going to keep pushing back on each other, and we're not going to grow with that. So this article's first tip is to ignore it and change the topic. So for example, your aunt walks up to you and says, "Oh my gosh, you have gained so much weight." How many of us have had somebody tell us that before? They're suggesting that you ignore it altogether and you just say, hey, it's so good to see you again. If you're somebody who likes to avoid conflict, this might be right up your alley. For me, I don't think I could just ignore it like that. But they give us some other additional tips. So let's go to the next one. The second strategy is to use an I statement and then change the subject. Now, first of all, I statements are so key to getting any points across. If you ever have an issue with somebody else, always use I statements and avoid the you statements. So somebody comes up to you, they hurt you. Instead of saying, you always hurt me, you are always mean, you are always unkind, you flip it to yourself and you say, I feel very hurt that you would make a comment about that. Or I feel very hurt by the fact that this was said about me. See how that changes things? People are not going to live on defense when you're making it about you and not about them. If you're not pointing to them and saying you, but you're focusing on yourself and saying I, people are more inclined to listen to you. And I have noticed this with my own family, even my immediate family. If I have an issue with something that they've said or that they've done, if I can start that conversation off by expressing how I feel about it and how it's affected me, it does me a lot of good in trying to move the conversation forward so that we can make amends and understand each other. So their example is a family member saying, hey, have you tried that diet I told you about? I don't know what you're waiting for. And you respond with something like, it is so sweet that you try to help me, but I find that I don't need to focus on my health. There's a lot of great things that are going on in my life right now. Have I told you about what happened at work? See how you very subtly change the subject. You made it very clear that talking about your body and weight loss was off the table for you, and you're giving them something else that you could talk about instead. Their third strategy is ask for help. So a family member says, oh my gosh, have you seen my arms? They jiggle so much. It's genetic, so watch out. You could then respond by saying, I forgot, I told you about this, but I've actually been making a really conscious decision to not talk about my body in a bad way, but to focus more on like what my body does for me and to focus more on being positive about how I feel about my body. So maybe you'd like to do it with me. You want to help each other out and hold each other accountable? That then opens up this window of opportunity to be able to talk to each other more about it. There is such a power in allowing yourself to be vulnerable in front of your family and to express yourself in this way, saying, you know what, I have struggled with my body a lot, but right now I'm trying not to focus on my weight. I'm trying not to focus on losing weight or the diets or anything like that. What I want to focus on right now is my mental health. Would you like to join me? Oftentimes, this world is so focused on the physical side of things and our physical appearance and the way our body looks, and everything is about the exterior, right? That we lose focus on the interior. We lose focus on mental health. And our mental health is such a key proponent in living a happy, healthy life. The fourth strategy they mention is when they involve your kids into it. This one personally gets me fuming inside because I try really hard to create an environment for my children where we don't discuss weight, we don't discuss people's outward appearance, and we don't negatively talk about people either, because I want them to know and realize that everyone is beautiful and everyone is worthy no matter what they look like. And I know for me, I always felt like there was like a very big focus on the way people look, just growing up in general. It's always been about how people look, you know, and then I caught myself kind of getting into that. And I know it'll happen naturally for my kids because they're human, especially my daughter, because women struggle with this the most and little girls struggle with this the most. But if I can do everything in my power to not make them think those things, to not make themselves feel less than, that I will do it. So this example was a family member saying, whoa, your kid has put on a lot of weight. Are they on a diet? Like, what are you doing, Mom? What's going on? You can then address it by saying, hey, listen, I make a real serious conscious effort to not bring up these kind of discussions in front of my children, because I want to teach them that the world is not about what they look like. It's about who they are and what their heart looks like. So if you could refrain from making these comments in front of my children and we could just avoid this conversation in the future, that'd be great. That's laying a personal boundary and saying, this is off limits. You have set that boundary. You have put that narrative into place. If they are interested in talking about your kid's weight, it's not okay with you. The fifth strategy they mentioned is to be honest and focus on your feelings. I personally don't feel like the strategy works with some families because I think I've seen personally, some people don't want to take responsibility for the fact that they said something that was completely asshole-ish, for lack of a better word. And so instead of taking responsibility for what they said, they're going to revert the blame back on you. So for example, I recently had to kind of change a relationship with a family member, and I don't really talk to this family member anymore. But when I set the boundary and I told this family member that I had to remove them from my life, and I explained to them why, and I explained to them that I was hurt and that, you know, what they said had bothered me, instead of being met with, oh, I'm so sorry that it bothered you, I didn't realize that it did that to you, I was instead met with, well, that's what happens when you're a sensitive snowflake. When you're a sensitive person, you're going to take everything personally. And that's just how you are. You're just sensitive. See how like that, instead of like taking responsibility for the fact that somebody's telling you that you hurt them, they're instead deflecting it and turning it back on how you're the sensitive one. So I don't always recommend this technique with family, especially if they are a family that are not empathetic and they don't really talk about feelings and they avoid feelings altogether. This may not be helpful. But if somebody comes up to you, the example that they used is, you know, they say, oh, you're looking so fat today. Then you could say, you know, those comments really, really hurt me. I know maybe I haven't expressed that before, but I feel really hurt when I leave your house because I feel like I often get criticized for the way that I look. And then you can say something like, I love you so much and I just don't want this topic of conversation to come between us because it really does hurt me. And then they know that you're coming from a place of love. And no, not everybody is going to accept it as a place of love. Some people are going to feel offended and call you a sensitive snowflake. But here's what I always say. I would rather be a sensitive snowflake than an arrogant butthole. Okay, I would rather be sensitive and in tune with my emotions and the emotions of others than be so closed off to anyone's feelings but my own that I can't even have a conversation where somebody's telling me that something hurts them. So own your sensitivity. Own it. I've had to own my sensitivity this year. I am a 4 on the Enneagram, okay? And if you don't know what the Enneagram is, you should take the test because it's great. But 4s, dude, we get the brunt of it all. Everyone's like, oh, you're an Enneagram 4. You're so sensitive and you're so emotional. And it's like, yeah, that's our superpower. That's why I'm sitting down right now making this video and talking to you guys about this, because 4s, we will meet you where you are emotionally. I will meet you where you are. It's a wonderful trait to have. Don't let a single soul on this earth shame you for being sensitive. Being sensitive is a superpower. We need more sensitive people in the world, especially right now in the year 2020. We need sensitivity. The sixth strategy they mention is the strategy of science, which is basically educating people who want to make a comment about food. So say, for example, one of your family members says, did you know those cookies have like 400 calories each? Probably not a good idea to be eating like 5 of those. Okay, that's, you know, I feel like we all have somebody in our family like this, somebody who's so focused on like health and nutrition, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's wonderful to have a passion in nutrition, but the science is there that if you deprive yourself of the foods that you love, you're gonna end up binging those foods later. So it's basically saying, if you have a family member that's trying to body shame you in the sense of like bringing calories into it and BMI scale and all of those things, you can reply by saying, did you know that if you restrict your foods, you actually end up binging them later? So I don't mind letting myself have cookies every now and then when I would like them, because life is all about moderation for me. And that's what I want to model to my kids. That's what I would personally say in that situation. And the 7th tip that they have is behavior modification. This one is key. And honestly, I probably have done all of the past ones before, but I feel like I kind of land right here on this seventh tip, this seventh strategy. If a family member comes up to you and they say, I don't understand why you're not as skinny as your sister, or I just don't understand why you have chosen to be unhealthy when you're a mom. Like, people look at my body and assume that I'm unhealthy because, you know, on the BMI chart, I'm obese, right? It's the same kind of thing. Like, it's people kind of making assumptions about your health or your body, but doing it in the sense of like trying to act like they're concerned. But you know that this person isn't actually concerned. They're just shaming. You can tell the difference between somebody who really loves you and cares about you and is actually concerned versus a person who you don't even have that deep of relationship with, who's acting concerned and really it's just coming across as very judgy, right? We all know the difference between those two people. This is where you set the boundary. This is where it's really important. You want to lay down the hammer here. So what you start off by saying is, hey, aunt, mom, dad, uncle, grandma, whoever's making the comments, we've had this conversation before and I have asked you to stop making those comments. I want to spend time with you and that's why I'm here, because I love you and I care about you and I want to spend the holidays with you, or I want to spend this birthday with you, or whatever event it is. But I also have to take care of myself and my own mental health. If you keep making comments like this, I'm not going to be able to visit anymore until you decide to stop. So can we agree for you to stop doing that? Can you stop doing that for me? Can you stop making these comments? And see how they respond. Listen, cutting out toxic family members or body shaming family members is extremely difficult. I know, because I've been there, especially this year. There's been lots of stuff that's happened that I'm not going to tell you guys about because it's, you know, personal, but listen when I tell you that I completely understand how hard it is to be able to remove these people, especially when you have people telling you, you don't remove family ever. Your family is your family. They will always be your family. You'll always disagree with your family, but that doesn't mean you ever let them out of your life. They always have to stay in your life. That's BS, okay? That is BS. I don't care if you're blood related to me. I don't care if we're just like friends from a distance. I don't care what our relationship is. If you're going to disrespect the boundaries that I have placed time and time and time again, and you're going to keep treating me that way, then you're not going to have a relationship with me. Period. The end. And it's hard when it's somebody we love and somebody that we're super, super close to. But sometimes it's absolutely necessary to restore that relationship and hopefully bring it to a place where you're both able to heal from it and also learn from it. Because oftentimes the comments that people make about us has nothing to do with us. It has everything to do with them. And so many people aren't willing to get help for the things and the struggles that they have. And so instead of dealing with all of that internalized hurt and pain that they have inside of themselves, once again, remember, it has to be released somewhere. And oftentimes it gets released with their words or their actions. But you don't have to take it. You do not have to take the treatment like that. You do not have to take the verbal abuse. You do not have to take the body shaming. That is not on you. That is on them. Your job is to set the boundaries. Your job is to use these strategies that are from this article and to lay them down and to say, this is my boundary. This is what I'm going to talk about with you, and this is what is off limits for me. And if you would like to keep having conversations with me, we can do so. But the second you want to cross it and start talking about these things that I've already said is off the table for me, then I am just going to remove myself from this conversation and possibly remove myself from your home. The follow through is really important. So if you're laying a boundary down to somebody and you're telling them that you can't have this discussion with them and they're ignoring what you have said, you got to follow through with what you said you were going to do. Because that is the way that people learn that their behavior is wrong and right. I think most of us have grown up not knowing anything about boundaries or healthy communication. All of these things are relatively new subjects, at least here in the United States, I feel like they are. And I know that my parents and my grandparents and my great-grandparents they didn't have discussions like this in their families either. So we just have to realize that there's decades and decades and decades of hurting people that have all of this stuff built up, and some of it may be stuff that their parents have told them or their grandparents have told them, and they're just passing it on. But we get to be the change, and we get to change our kids' futures. And that is so exciting to think about, that we have the power to change the conversation. It starts with us, and it starts with laying those loving but honest boundaries. So I hope that this video was helpful. I really, really hope it was. As I was reading through each of these strategies, I felt like it was healing for me in some ways, because oftentimes when we remove people from our lives, especially family, there can often be a guilt that's associated with that. You have every right to do what you feel you need to do best, because remember, your mental health is important and you matter. That's all there is to it. You matter. You are loved, you are worthy, and you are a freaking warrior. Okay? Especially if you've been dealing with fat shaming comments from your family your whole life. Like, listen, you don't have to carry that burden anymore. Okay? The sooner that you can be honest and straightforward with your family and your friends about these things, the better. It's going to relieve so much of that weight that you've been carrying, so much of that depression and so much of that anxiety. And when we stick up for ourselves and we say to people, no, I'm not going to be treated like that, it makes us have more confidence in ourselves too. It builds up our self-esteem, and it truly is a wonderful thing. It's been so hard, but so good too. It's been both. And I just want you to know, you're not alone in whatever you're facing today. Feel free to write in the comments below. I would actually love to hear from those of you who have struggled with family members or friends who have body shamed you in the past. How have you handled it? Or have you not handled it at all? Has it been something that's been so intimidating and so scary that you've just kind of clenched up and dealt with it? I would just love to hear your experiences. If you're willing to share them with us, we would love to hear them. And I just want the comments below to be an encouraging, safe, and happy place where we can talk about these things and edify each other and encourage each other and root each other on and say, girl or guy, you got this. We are standing in your corner. So I love you guys, and we will see you tomorrow for another video.
Oh, you know.